Good morning. On behalf of United Way of the National Capital Area and the entire staff, welcome to Project Community Connect. I'm Lavina Kim, Director of Community Engagement. We're so excited to work with our partners on PCC's mission to build community, shift mindsets through personal experience and connection, and provide critical resources to individuals and families here in the DMV region. We're so excited to have you with us this morning. We have a wonderful lineup of speakers who will talk and share with you information about accessing vital financial assistance in the form of rental and utility assistance here in the state of Virginia. We will welcome Q&A at the end of our formal presentations. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two speakers this morning. They are Nora Daly. She is the Director of Programs and Community Engagement at the Northern Virginia Housing Alliance. She joined the Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance as Director of Programs and Community Engagement in February 2020. In her role, she leverages communications, research, data analytic capabilities to support the organization's core programs and COVID-19 response. Presently, she manages the organization's eviction prevention program. Also joining her is Keisha Dotson. She, with passion, enjoys serving her community and has made a career out of meeting the needs of those who are underserved. Presently, she serves as a division director in the Fairfax County Department of Neighborhood and Community Services with Fairfax County government. She works directly with the program Access to Community Resources and Programs Division. Without further ado, I'd love to welcome both Nora and Keisha.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And thank you to our audience for joining us on this Saturday morning. If you could advance the slide, please. My name is Nora Daly, and I'm the Director of Programs and Community Engagement with the Northern Virginia Affordable Housing Alliance. NVHSA is a regional nonprofit that promotes healthy, equitable, and sustainable communities that meet the diverse housing needs of Northern Virginia residents. And we work across 6 jurisdictions, the cities of Alexandria and Falls Church, and Arlington, Fairfax, Loudoun, and Prince William counties. We are not a direct service organization, so we do not provide rental assistance to residents. However, we do aggregate information on best practices and policies that promote housing stability at the federal, state, and local level. And we share information and resources with local government staff and human service providers, landlords, and residents across our region to promote housing stability. If you can advance the slide, please. This is an overview of what I'm going to cover in my presentation today. I am going to provide a lot of information fairly quickly, so I just wanted to note that all of this information is available on the COVID-19 resource page of our website, which is nvhsa.org. If you prefer to view the information in hard copy, you can also download our Northern Virginia Eviction Prevention and Housing Stability Toolkit or the Tenant Supplement to that toolkit, which is available in both English and Spanish. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the tenant protections that were enacted in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So the protections that I'll review on this slide are all in place through June of 2022. The first thing to know is before filing an unlawful detainer or eviction suit against you, your landlord must provide you with what's called a pay or quit notice, and then they need to wait 14 days before filing suit. So the pay or quit notice requirement itself is not new. That was in place before the pandemic. What is new is the 14-day waiting period. It used to be 5 days, so it has been extended. Also important to know, if your landlord owns 5 or more units, they must offer you a repayment plan. So instead of a pay or quit notice, you should actually receive a pay or enter a repayment plan notice. The repayment plan should have no late fees, and it should last either 6 months or the remainder of your lease term, whichever is a shorter period of time. And if you choose to enter the repayment plan, your landlord can only then file to evict if you miss a payment on the plan. And at that point, they would have to give you another 14-day notice. I like to start out talking about the 14-day notice because pay or quit notice or pay or enter a repayment plan notice can be confusing. And we unfortunately do hear from our community partners that some folks will actually move out of their units after receiving this notice. So I do like to start by emphasizing, if you receive a pay or quit notice, or even if you receive a summons to appear in court, you do not have to vacate your unit, and you have the right to remain in your home pending the full legal process. Some other changes to note. Before, if you've been financially impacted by COVID, your landlord cannot file to evict you for non-payment of rent without first applying for rental assistance on your behalf. Or if you've already applied on your own, they must fully cooperate with your application by providing all of the required supporting documentation, including the state W-9 form. And your landlord can only then file to evict you if you've been financially impacted by COVID, if your application is denied, or if it is not approved within 45 days for first-time applicants, or 14 days for returning applicants. So if you've previously applied to or received assistance through the program. If you do have questions about a specific case, so if you or a client you work with has received a pay or quit notice or a summons, I should say I am not a lawyer, but I would encourage you to reach out to Legal Services of Northern Virginia. And for reference, I have included the phone number and website for legal services on this slide. If you could advance the slide, please. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on rental assistance now, because the programs that I'll discuss briefly here will be covered in depth later in the call. But you will be hearing today about 2 programs, the State Rent Relief Program, or RRP, and the Fairfax County Program. So both of these programs are pathways to access federal emergency rental assistance, or ERA funding. This is the largest and most complete source of rental assistance in the state at this time. ERA funding can cover full months of rent. It can cover future months' rent and previous month's rent that you may owe, including if you've experienced an eviction during the pandemic and still owe your previous landlord rent and need to zero out that balance. You can apply for assistance with ERA funding. So I do encourage folks to apply for ERA funding before exploring other rental assistance options. And for most Virginia residents, that means applying through the State Rent Relief Program, or RRP. There's 2 points of entry for this program. Residents can apply online or by calling the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development run call center, and landlords can apply online through a landlord portal that's managed by Virginia Housing. The exception to applying for ERA assistance through RRP is Fairfax County residents and landlords. So Fairfax County received their portion of the federal ERA funding directly. So for that reason, Fairfax County residents and landlords are not eligible to apply for RRP, and they need to apply for assistance directly through the county. So similarly, there's a pathway for residents and a pathway for landlords. Both can apply directly for assistance. Residents apply by calling Coordinated Services Planning, or CSP, and landlords apply through the landlord portal that's run through the county's eviction prevention website. The infographic on the right-hand side of the slide here just provides an overview of the information that I've just gone over. It guides you for where to apply to assistance based on where you live, and what to do if you are found ineligible for that federal emergency rental assistance funding. And I just wanted to note that this resource is available to download from the COVID-19 resource page of our website, and it is available in both English and Spanish. Next slide, please. A few notes on utilities assistance. So if your utilities are included in your lease agreement, you can apply for that ERA assistance that I just mentioned to cover your utilities as well as your rent. If your utilities are not included in your lease, there are many nonprofit and faith-based sources of assistance throughout Northern Virginia. The specific programs that you might be eligible for will vary based on the jurisdiction where you live. So I'd encourage folks to contact 211 for a list of the nonprofit resources in their area. And just a couple of notes for folks who are Dominion Energy customers. So Dominion is the largest electricity provider in the state. So if you know that your electric bill comes from Dominion Energy, you should know that the state government ordered Dominion to forgive all unpaid balances that were more than 30 days overdue as of December 31st, 2020. So if you had a bill that was more than a month overdue at the end of last year, that balance should have been forgiven. Also, Dominion is not allowed to disconnect customers who have received utilities assistance. So if you, at any point in the pandemic, have received either help through RRP, help through Fairfax County, help from a nonprofit source, you cannot have your utilities disconnected by Dominion before March 1st, 2022. Next slide, please. So I wanted to wrap up by just providing a quick overview of some additional resources that are available on our website. I've already mentioned our Northern Virginia Eviction Prevention and Housing Stability Toolkit and our tenant supplement. If you're wondering whether to download the toolkit or the tenant supplement, the toolkit includes all of the information from the tenant supplement, plus additional information for federal, state, and local policymakers, and guidance for landlords on how changes in state law apply to them. The tenant supplement is going to include just the information that's relevant to tenants experiencing housing instability and human service providers who are working with those tenants. And the supplement does include all of the information that I've covered in my presentation today. And again, that resource is available in both English and Spanish. In the top right corner of my slide is our eviction timeline infographic. So this is a resource that we developed in partnership with Legal Services of Northern Virginia, and it outlines all of the steps in the eviction process. So previously, when I said you have the right to remain in your home pending a full legal process, this is going to outline what that process looks like. This resource, again, is available in English and Spanish. In the bottom right-hand corner of the slide here, I apologize, the image is a little small, but we do have an infographic outlining tenant protections that were enacted in response to the pandemic. So this is the information I covered on my very first slide, which was very text-heavy, and it outlines what protections have expired. So maybe there's something you thought was missing from that slide. You can see if it's expired, and then the protections that I mentioned that are in place through June of 2022. And the last resource I wanted to note for any local government staff and human service providers on the call is our Northern Virginia Eviction Prevention and Rental Assistance Data Dashboard. So this is an interactive dashboard that shows the count of eviction filings, case outcomes, the amount of rental assistance funds dispersed, and the number of households assisted at the zip code level in the 6 localities where we work. And we created this resource to support targeted outreach by local government and human service providers and targeted disbursement of resources to reach the communities that are most in need during the pandemic and beyond. So if you could advance the slide, please. This is my contact information for anyone who has questions about the information that was just covered. And I did want to provide a few more details on that state rent relief program that I mentioned before I will turn it over to Keisha. So the state rent relief program, as I mentioned, this program has 2 pathways. So the important thing to know in applying for this program, if you're a resident and you want to apply directly, again, you can apply online or by calling a call center that is run by the Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. And that call center is going to be a pathway for folks who want to receive assistance in a language other than English. So they do have folks at the call center who will be able to support applications in different languages. There is also a landlord portal, so landlords can apply directly for assistance on behalf of tenants. That portal is managed by Virginia Housing, the State Housing Finance Agency. And this slide here just includes, you can see the link to the online application for residents, the phone number that you can call, and then the link as well to access that landlord portal. And I'm going to turn it over to Keisha now, who can discuss more of the eligibility requirements for this program. Thank you all.
Hey, thank you, Nora. Again, my name is Keisha Dotson, and I am coming to you from Fairfax County Neighborhood and Community Services. But I want to speak a little bit about the overarching rent and relief program. Statewide, as the criteria are the same both at the state level and with Fairfax County. So for households to qualify for this rental assistance, they must be a household obligated with a rental obligation, and their income, household income, must be at or below 80% of area median income, and the household rent cannot exceed 150% of the fair market rent. And there must be some sort of determination to determine that they're unable to make the rental payments due to COVID-19. Next slide, please. So there's required documentation to make a household eligible, to deem a household eligible for this assistance. So starting with a rental agreement, a valid lease, or an alternative lease documentation, which may include the tenant and landlord full names, monthly rent amount, the amount of the rent, including any utilities or internet, in addition to the terms of the lease required to meet the requirement for the rental agreement. Also, there needs to be a tenant and landlord ledger, as well as tenant income documentation and landlord's Virginia W-9, in addition to a RRP, rent relief program, landlord and tenant agreement. Next slide, please. Some changes and clarifications to the RRP guidelines include that a trusted third party can assist individuals in completing the application. Funds can be made to pay 3 months prospective rent for those eligible tenants, and you can maximize the amount of rental assistance for 18 months total, and that they do not need to be in arrears to receive the assistance. Individuals who receive unemployment benefits do not need to attest to a negative financial impact. So the total household gross monthly income is still required to be at or below 80% AMI, and the rental unit at 150% or below of FMR. Next slide, please. Households with 3 or less household members who access either the TANF, WIC, SNAP, or LEHEP do not need to provide income documentation. Households with 3 or less can benefit from the fact-specific proximity for certain zip codes and do not need to provide income documentation. And households of any size that are receiving a housing subsidy also do not need to provide that income documentation. Households receiving subsidies are eligible for RRP assistance to cover the amount of rent that the household owes. Next slide, please. Here you'll have some information about the states and how many applications have been processed, showing upwards of 71,000 applications since July of 2020, in addition to the amounts of assistance that have gone out, with $386 million going out into the community to meet this need. And the average rent is showing at the average rent payment showing $5,436. These stats, next slide, can be found on the slide, and we will provide these details to you independently on the copy of the slide. And this just breaks down the households by income, and you're able to see that overwhelmingly 74% of those served have incomes at or below 30% of AMI. Next slide, please. This gives you some demographic breakdown to show you race and ethnicity information. This information, again, will all be shared with you in the copy of the presentation. Next slide, please. And then most importantly, thank you. Most importantly, there are some additional links that are available that give an FAQ for tenants and landlords, as well as a self-assessment to see if this program might be right for you. And those links will be provided as well. Next slide, please. This process outlines the landlord application process and gives you a sample of a flowchart of sorts of how that process works, with the landlord submitting a request to do a profile in the system, and walks you through all of the steps until the funds are sent out to the landlord. Next, please. Some final points for those landlords that are participating on the call today. You can download the user guide right on the website, and you want to go ahead and make sure you read that in detail. There's lots of information. As I just mentioned, there is a user guide with lots of information, and questions and emails can be sent to rentrelief@virginiahousing.com. And please remember that email address is for the state, with the exception of Fairfax County in Northern Virginia. Please move forward. This is another flow chart that shows you how the application process works and goes through the steps for tenant-initiated applications through the Duval Call Center. And this gives you step-by-step to show you from beginning to end. Next slide, please. And there are some outreach and engagement efforts that are occurring for the state level to access and increase outreach to those rural areas, as well as communities where English is not the primary language, also engaging communities of color and small landlords. And you'll have links available to you to download the toolkits and outreach materials. Next, please. And some general contact information for after this slide. If there's some more information you want about the state program, you will find the key personnel for those resources there, in addition to the email address that I previously mentioned. Next, please. Okay, so I will take that hat off and put my Fairfax County hat on. As Nora mentioned earlier in the call, Fairfax County elected to develop a program to serve those Fairfax County residents directly within the state. So our funds that we receive from Treasury for Fairfax County residents are with the county, and the entry point I'm going to talk about a little bit now. Next slide, please. Where the criteria that I just explained to you about the state program are exactly the same for the local Fairfax County program. But how we're administering the program and the support, and some additional supports for community members, I'll go over with you here. We basically have a three-prong approach where we have coordinated services planning, which is our front door for human services in Fairfax County. That's one entry point for resident initiated assistance for all things basic needs. And that's one point where we'll enter, and I'll spend a little time to break these down separately. Next up, we have our eviction prevention and intervention team. This team is working directly with Sheriff's Department and courts and other community providers, as well as our Fairfax County Eviction Task Force, to identify those residents who may already be court involved and unaware of the resources that are available. So we do direct outreach to those individuals that are involved in the court process. And the last prong is with our landlord portal. There, landlords are able to go onto the site and set up an account and to apply on behalf of tenants directly through the Fairfax County portal. Next slide, please. Fairfax County Coordinated Services Planning, or CSP, is we've existed in this call center for human services and entry point to human services in the county for 25 years now. And that number is 703-222-0880. And I like to always say that number out loud to make sure that we have that handy. And if we can make that available in the chat as well, that'll be helpful. Fairfax elected to take this role of the ERA assistance, which we'll talk about specifically, through meeting the need. Our philosophy in Fairfax County is one story, one time. Interacting with those residents in Fairfax County that may have a need, such as the emergency rent or utility, we are able to assess for other needs that they may have. There may be other financial needs. There may be emergency food needs for those tenants. So with residents initiating support and calling through, they'll be linked with a social services specialist to do a broad-based assessment or review to determine what types of assistance that they need. And we are able to get them linked through that resource where the resident is initiating the assistance. Also, there are some technology enhancements on the horizon to also have a portal to to go along with this service. Right now, those callers that are calling into CSP or to coordinated services planning are able to prioritize their rent need. So if they don't have any other needs, they're able to go through and get assessed for that service, and linkages can be made. Next slide, please. The landlord tenant portal, along with the state, we also have very detailed instructions on that page to allow individuals to apply on behalf of the tenants, with, of course, the tenant participating in that by providing the necessary documentation to support those applications. All eligibility is determined through the portal. We partner with our nonprofit partners in Fairfax County to make sure that information is available out to the community, whether it be a larger corporate landlord or smaller individual landlords in the community, to let them know the details of the emergency rental assistance and how to apply and how to partner to get those resources out to the community. That work continues. And right now we are seeing a bit of an increase in the landlord tenant portal. So that those outreach efforts are going well. Next, please. I talked a little bit about this earlier, but our EPI team, our eviction prevention intervention team, has been in place for over a year now, where we have been actively reaching out and trying to engage those individuals who may not know about the various resources that are available to them as Fairfax County residents. So we're working with the sheriff's office, with the court, to make sure that those individuals who may be appearing to court are connected and know how to access rental assistance. We have been able to do that and make those connections with the community to encourage them to apply or to have landlords apply. We partner with Legal Services of Northern Virginia in getting that information out to those who may come to either the pro se docket at court or come into the court looking for some assistance, to make sure that those connections are made and we're able to do that. Just to share a little bit with, next slide, please. I think this is my last one. Thank you. So before we move on to this piece, just to share a little bit of information about some of the things that we're doing in Fairfax County to help get the word out. Our call center, our CSP call center, we have over 14 languages on staff right now, in addition to language support in all different languages to meet the need of those calling in. In addition, we're doing targeted outreach. We're working with our vaccine equity clinics to make sure information is out. We're spending a lot of resources in getting the connection. But one of the things we're really focused on right now is not only just getting the information out to those that need it, making sure that we're getting supports in place to help complete applications and to provide the necessary documentation to us so that we're able to meet the need. I'm very grateful to say that we've been able to, since the beginning of the pandemic response, not just with ERA, but also various funding sources, we've been able to assist over 14,000 households and got $50 million out into the community to help them meet the needs in Fairfax County. And where we're looking at our ERA right now, we are at about $20 million of ERA spending that has gone out to help those in need. And we are continuing to work through the need that's been identified, helping people to get the necessary documents back to us so that we can close loops and preserve housing in Fairfax County. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nora and Keisha. Why don't we take a few seconds here to see if we've received any questions? If you have a question, please add them to the chat or Q&A function. One question that's come through is, can we have a recap of the contact for renters outside of Fairfax County, please?
Yes, we'll put the link in the chat. If you go to the fairfaxcounty.gov website and just search eviction, you'll be able to pull it right up, but I'll include the link in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you, Keisha. Again, if our audience has any questions, please add them to the chat and Q&A. So it looks like we don't have any additional questions at this time. I do want to thank all of our audience who has joined us this morning to learn more about what available resources and information is out there to help you if you are struggling with meeting rental payment concerns or utility payment concerns. Sincere thanks to our special guests this morning, Nora Daly and Keisha Dotson. I hope our audience and those who joined us were able to take away some new information and new resources and knowledge to help you access financial assistance that is available through Fairfax County and through the state of Virginia. We will be sharing these slides and all the information that you heard today through our website, which is unitedwaynca.org/PCC. Again, sincere thanks to our guest speakers, Nora Daly and Keisha Dotson, and to all of our audience members who joined us this morning. Wishing everyone a great rest of the day, and please continue to be safe and well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.